So we are with the student here in the room, and with Joaquin, with the other professor of the courses. We present you, and then we can start with the talk. Falta, Jimena, la traducción del español. No sé si podrías preguntarle al de Viña. A Sebastián, sí, por favor. The following talk is part of the extension activities of the History and Theory of Architecture course that we have here in Campus Creativo, en la Universidad Andrés Bello. This is the third version of the course in which students learn research methodologies and analyze different models of architectural project from Arabian landscape. This year in particular, thanks to the collaboration with the MAMA files and archive, we are working with cases located in Morocco. For this reason, we have now Lahbib, who will present the foundation work and better contextualize the situation of this architecture after the independence of the territory, emphasizing the development of our discipline in the colonial context, political crisis, and the reformulation of identities and cultures.
Bueno, y ahora voy a presentar a Lahbib. Lahbib el Mounni es un arquitecto radicado en Casablanca, Marruecos. Es cofundador de MAMA, una asociación local que busca destacar y preservar el patrimonio moderno marroquí. Es candidato a doctorado en el Instituto de Historia y Teoría del Diseño Urbano en ETH Zurich. La investigación doctoral de Lahbib explora cómo Marruecos, tras su independencia, utilizó el diseño urbano en su proyecto de construcción nacional. Entre sus publicaciones destacadas se encuentra el volumen editado Le Patrimoine Architectural de Barit al-Magrib del 2022 y el artículo Brutalism, The Gem of Morocco's Contribution to World Culture en 2022. And for you, Lahbib, in English, Lahbib al-Mounni is an architect based in Casablanca, Morocco. He is the co-founder of MAMA, a local association that aims to highlight and preserve the modern Moroccan heritage. He is a doctoral candidate at the Institute of the History and Theory of Urban Design and at ETH Zurich. Lahbib's doctoral research delves into how independent Morocco used urban design in its nation-building project. Notable publications include the edited volume Le Patrimoine Architectural de Barit al-Maghrib, and the article Brutalism, the Gem of Morocco's Contribution to World Culture, both in 2022. Okay, Lahbib, you can continue. Start your talk. Wait a little bit. We are dealing with the traduction of the Zoom.
The presentation?
Yeah. You guys see my screen?
Yes.
You see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes. You can start.
Great. Okay, well, thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much, Jose. I mean, it was quite an amazing actually to get in touch in between two super distant continents, but yet we have a lot in common, and I have a lot in common through architecture in many ways. I am okay. I have here. So should I do select? Okay, it's gonna be translated, right?
Yes, yes. Now it's working.
Okay. I'm sorry, my presentation is going to be in English. I wish I could have been able to do it in Spanish, although I understand a bit of Spanish. As you might know, Morocco was colonized by France and Spain. But eventually, the north of Morocco and also the south, they are the ones who talk more in Spanish. But Casablanca it was the colony of France, so I speak more French than actually English and Spanish. But, okay, so yeah, thank you very much. I would like to thank the School of Architecture and also CA for making this happening. It was quite a delight to have students from Chile working on modern architecture in Morocco, and I hope this is only the beginning of a bigger collaboration. So my presentation today, I always like to start with a good search of what is architecture in the country, in each country. And so, of course, if you Google Chile architecture, this is what the first page of Google will show you. Of course, you have the famous work of Aravena, of course, and you have also some more contemporary architecture, and also the landscape of the city with some small colonial architecture also photos, right? But when you type in Morocco architecture, in the major time, it's always about this type of architecture, which is more the architecture of not colonial, but the architecture of the pre-modern history of Morocco. And of course, this is also somewhat a particular image of how Morocco is viewed by the world, or how Morocco is viewed by, especially by the West. So of course, this heritage that we live with in Morocco, the one that we are interested in, is a heritage that is not very much known. It's also a very overlooked heritage somehow. We have been working, now it's going to be 10 years, since 2016. We have been trying to highlight the modern architecture in Morocco, especially from 50 to 80, which is late colonial times and the early independence. So Morocco had independence in 1956, but of course this architecture, this modern history, comes of course in the leading years of many historical threats. This is a bit pictures of the protagonists, the architects, who actually are the builders of this independent Morocco, and also this colonial Morocco, which is I will try to show you in this presentation. But before, just to give you context, because I know that now the students are also being somewhat specialists of modern architecture in Morocco because they've been working a lot on these buildings. But I have to show you the context in which this generation emerged. So, as a case study, I'm going to talk about my city, Casablanca. So, you can see here a picture of Casablanca in 1917. Casablanca is a city, it's a coastal city. It's also the biggest city in Morocco today. It has more than 6 million inhabitants. It's also the most the most targeted city in terms of modernism, because it was really this city that was connected to the whole world somehow. Casablanca originated from this plan by an urbanist, French urbanist. His name is Mounni. So Mounni, as you can see here in the picture, we have the Medina, which is this big part, black, which is the Medina, the old town. And then you have what they called at that time the European town. And then you have other parts of the cities like this new town for what they call the indigenous. So in a way, this plan showed already the segregation between the two populations, the European population and the Moroccan population. Jose, is everything all right? Can I continue? Or?
Yes, continue.
All good?
Yes, it's all. Continue.
Okay. So these are the architects, mostly French architects who built in this period in Morocco. And of course, what they built, here you see some pictures of this European city. You see, of course, the park, the Grand Park, which was, by the way, designed by a landscape architect who used to work a lot in South America, actually. Jean-Claude Nicolas Forestier is a French landscape architect. And of course, what was nice is that in history, he talks about this idea that the plants that survive in Latin America, they are quite alike in Morocco because of the climate, because we have a very, very similar climate somehow. But then, of course, this city grew up from basically from scratch. Beside the Medina, everything was completely constructed. And you can see here some of the pictures of this town. It was a town for actually mostly Europeans. So the whole European zone was built with many public buildings like this one. Here you can see the church, Sacré-Cœur, which is very interesting because it shows this idea of Casablanca as a white city. As also a city where architecture is very neutral and also the architecture is very pure somehow. But of course, in the heart of this European town, there was also this idea that we should make the architecture built with modern materials, but still we should make it look a bit Moroccan somehow. So this is a very colonial kind of framework of how we can show architecture in Morocco. And so here you can see different patterns and different new ideas about how we can translate traditional architecture into modern architecture. In this part of the town, we have these kind of buildings, which are pretty much all still present. And here I just want to show you one example of it. This is the Imam Ibn Kamal, built in 1928. And this building is at the heart of the European town. It is really like a hybrid style between Arabisans, between Neo-Moorish, and the Art Deco style. This building, when it was built, it was also an avant-garde building because already in the 1920s, architecture in Casablanca or in Morocco built in this era was very, very, let's say, futuristic, because these buildings had already, for example, the elevator, they had already equipment, they had already refrigerators in the house, they had, of course, toilets. Well, I'm saying this because it's very important to put into the context. In 1920, even in Paris, the major part of Paris does not have buildings with toilets. Only the bourgeois people have toilets in their houses. So this shows you, in a way, this imprint that was put in Casablanca as a modern city, as a city that has actually a very avant-garde, urbanistic, but also architectural relay. This is a picture of this building today. It's pretty much very well conserved. And of course, Casablanca is also this city that was, of course, for entertainment. I think you might know the film Casablanca, that is very known. Casablanca was very much connected to the whole world because, for example, when a movie is launched in New York, it will be launched on the same day in Casablanca too. So this also shows you this entertainment bubble in which European town lived in. And here you can see some of the buildings that unfortunately they don't exist anymore. The Vox Cinema, the biggest cinema in Africa with more than 1,200 seats. And down, you see the biggest swimming pool in the world, built in 1934, with more than 400 units. So these are some of the buildings that actually no longer exist in Casablanca, but it also shows you how important these are. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but this is very interesting to show you where the Moroccan is. So this is what I show you right now is the European part, and this is the Moroccan part. So the Moroccan part was built on this idea of let's make buildings that are connected to the history of Moroccans. That is more traditional type of architecture, and of course this was kind of the new version of the old town. An architecture that is very dense, an architecture of where we have the mosques as a space for prayer and also public spaces, and also where streets are tiny, are very small, that actually, let's say, mimic somehow the old town. But of course, this architecture also shows you how segregated are the spaces, and also shows how also this idea of European architects always framing the Moroccans as not able to live in a European city. And in fact, even the European city in Casablanca and also other cities in Morocco, they were not accessible for Moroccans at the time. So they were only accessible to serve, you can go of course there, but it was not accessible to live in there. And we'll talk a lot about this because, of course, this is the city growing up, is here. And then in the red spot, you find the industrial zone in the east of Casablanca. And in this industrial zone, the French will be actually building the constructions for Moroccans, for the labor. Here you can see a photo of the cement factory in the east of Casablanca. And this is the beginning in the 1930s of what we call company towns or workers' housing, like this one, for instance. This is the picture of this company housing today. It is not as well as conserved as you can see in the other buildings, but you can see the factory behind it, the sugar factory. This is the biggest sugar factory in Morocco. It produces all of the sugar, not all, but most of the sugar that Morocco eats today. The town is really built in this idea again of the old town, so the Medina, you have the arches, you have tiny streets and so on. And of course, what you can see already, people, of course, with the time, they transformed these houses and they made them more, let's say, spacious for them because it was really very small and it was not comfortable for the whole family. And of course, it's very interesting as an exercise for students to see the transformations, to see how space changes and so on. The last example that I will show you from the colonial times is this one, Sikenso, which was also part of this workers' housing. And you can see again here in some archival documents these drawings that are showing very detailed decorations of Moroccan architecture. And this is the image of this huge town that was built between 1945 and 1952. Okay, so now comes 1950, and this is the international movement of modern architecture. This is also the Siam meetings, and of course, Morocco also had its own branch of Siam and participated for the first time in 1953. What sort of participation Moroccan is? They actually showed these kind of pictures that show the penalties, that show actually the shanty or slums, because this was really the biggest problem in Morocco in 1950. As I told you, this huge bubble where you have European town, you have very tiny, small Moroccan town. And so that's why a lot of people came in with migration to work in Casablanca, and they didn't find where to live, and so they started building what we call slums. Morocco really intersected in this international movements of modernism, expressionism, brutalism. This is all something that we will see later on in Morocco. So this is a bit just to show you the differentiation. I mean, Algeria was also represented, but also Morocco was represented with Siam by Michel Cochard, that I'm going to talk about in a bit. Okay, so 1950 is also Morocco growing, is also the whole economy completely changes. So Morocco capital before the colonial time was actually Fez. Fez, which is the central town here, you see. Marrakesh was one of the biggest cities also in Morocco. But then, during the colonial times, Casablanca transformed to be the biggest economy hub, the biggest economy part of Morocco. And of course, the port played a very important role. The port got bigger, and so is the population. This is how Moroccan, major part of Moroccans is. Of course, this is like shanty towns in the outskirts of the city. And so here you see a map of Casablanca in 1953 that shows all these slums situated in the outskirts, situated in the periphery of the city. Michel Cochard, who is a French urbanist, he will come to Morocco in 1946 and he will establish a very important agency. It's called Service de l'Urbanisme. So it's a service of urbanism, of urban planning and housing. And so he will propose a new typology for Moroccan's housing. This typology he called the grid 8 per 8. So it's a grid of 8 meter per 8 meter, in which you have 2 or 3 rooms and a courtyard. This is exactly how we imagined it. You can see here some of the pictures of this 8 per 8 grid. This is pretty much the most important, let's say, urban design project in Morocco of the time, and also the most known today. I mean, there are many literature and there's a lot of books on these buildings. Of course, at the time also there was this experiment of how we can build for Moroccans high-rise buildings. So these are where the first experiments of that. And you can see here a picture showing to you the Bidonville in your right, and then you have in the center of the town how it will be built, and then you have the explosion of these same patterns repeated. These buildings that I'm showing you here are one of the most famous buildings at the time. These buildings were really very famous that actually they went into big magazines of architecture, like Architecture Aujourd'hui, but also some architects like Peter and Alison Smithson, they will talk about it as being the most important and really like the example to follow of modern architecture in the 1950s. Following that, Morocco will have many and many more buildings for that. And you can see here a very nice building done by Swiss architect Hans Suder, built in 1955, also in Casablanca. This is the first large block of housing for Moroccans, built in 1957. So 1957 is already the independence of Morocco. 1956, so here is 1 year after independence, and you can see a change in terms of how we frame Moroccans. So here it's no longer the Moroccans should only live in ground floor houses. Here actually the idea that now we can actually build exactly as anywhere in the world also. Here I have one citation by a French historian, to actually Jean-Luc who made this very important book. If you're interested in modern architecture, colonial modern architecture, Casablanca, this is one of the main books. It's called Casablanca Mythe Figure de l'Aventure, and it also has an English version of it. So he said Morocco's protectorate period is a French achievement, but it must be said an achievement that not having to undergo the French law will make experimenting impossible, to do in France in complete freedom. One idea comes from this citation is the fact that French architects, they had really the liberty to really experiment many things. They had the liberty to experiment in Casablanca. That's why Casablanca was called also the laboratory of modern architecture, because many architects really experimented many things in this city. So now we go to independence, and independence, of course, it relates very much to this last period that I just showed you now. Of course, Morocco at the time was very known by this kind of buildings. It was also featured in many magazines internationally, and also had inspirations from many other publications and many other architects like Mounni or even Brazilian architects or South Americans in general. So this type of architecture, you can see also a very interesting, let's say, inspiration from both sides. Here, for example, we see a villa by Jean-François called Messina, and in your right you can see the villa by Frank Lloyd, for example. You can also see this type of architectures of Elias Ebri, Moroccan architect, built this villa in Casablanca, and next to it, Jabal. So these, let's say, modernist ideals, it was very important that to say that actually Moroccan architects were very much familiar with this typologies of architecture all over the world. So it was never, let's say, a closed country on its own architecture, but actually it was very open and it was also pioneering in many ways also. Here, after the independence, of course, it's an independent country, it's a lot of buildings to be built, it's a lot of schools, it's a lot of housing, it's a lot of hotels, it's a lot of infrastructure, but the architects were very few. I mean, after the independence of Morocco, there were only 2 architects practicing in Morocco by 1956. And of course, this means that many of European architects either they stayed to build in Morocco, or we also had many other architects coming from all over the world to work in Morocco. And this, I will come back to it by the end of my lecture. Here you see this beautiful school, Rochemar in Casablanca, and here you see a photo of today. These buildings today are, I'm not saying abundant, all of them, but a lot of them, people don't really acknowledge the history of them. So they are still alive, and this is also the work that the association do, which is basically going and visiting the architecture and trying to see if it's still sustained or not. This is the École des Instructeurs, a school for instructors in Ouarzazate, built in 1961 by Jean-François Zerako. This is the picture of it today. A very, very nice building. Fortunately, I mean, it still needs a bit of maintaining, but the building is still built the same. Here is the Faculty of Science in Fez, and you can see also this picture of today, which is completely intact. This building is one of the most favorites for me personally. In Agadir, which is a city that I'm going to talk about a bit more, you have also this huge slab that reminds us of this architecture of Niemeyer, of this architecture of Jesus Costa, also this architecture of these big modernist slabs. That actually still exists also, and it's very much a building that is very present in this city. Agadir was a city that was completely vanished by an earthquake in 1960. You can see here a map of everything that was demolished in red. You can see that the whole city basically was destructed, and even 15,000 dead and more. All of the buildings were completely demolished, and so it was also this time when Morocco just got independence, but then okay, let's show us what we can do now that we have independence. This is a bit the question that was in the state to say, okay, we are independent, but now we should take our own, let's say, future in hands, and we should rebuild the city. So this was done by a group of architects of the series of domains that I talked about. And you can see here a pretty much modernist ideas of how to build a new city. Here you can see the Chapdelaine, the Athene shutters with all the functions of walking, circulating, of housing, and so on and so on. And here you can see how the city was divided in different zones. The city was really like a tremendous, big construction site, and it was completed in only 5 years. The center of it, with a big portion of public buildings, but also housing. And it was also like a very interesting moment of architecture where actually you have Brasilia is being built as the capital of Brazil, already started in 1958, and again in 1960 is the new construction of the whole city as well. Again, here is a picture of one of the buildings of the large street I showed you, and all here you have also the firehouse or the fire station in Agadir, again by Jean-François. Here you see a very super interesting mosque done by a German architect, Hans-Georg Lenz, because as I told you again, this is only the beginning of independence, so a lot of foreign architects were still building and designing in Morocco. There was not a lot of Moroccan architects, there were only very, very few. But then the next, let's say, wave of architects will come by late 60s and beginning of 70s. And these architects will really rethink how we do modern architecture. In between these architects, you find Farabi, Aslan, and Kafsh Mazia. This is an office that was established in 1960, and already built many buildings in Morocco, but particularly these series of hotels that actually I shared with students, and I think some of the students worked on these buildings. This is the hotel that is, and you can see a very interesting correlation between the hotel built in 1964, and you can see in your right the huge castle of Qasr al which is actually in UNESCO Heritage today, and it's like a big, let's say, village of black earth architecture houses. When you look at another project in the north now, because we were in the south, where actually it is very hot, and so we have to protect it from the sun. Here in the north is another climate, but also there is always this idea of combining volumes together. This is the holiday village in Cabo Negro in 1968, and you can see also here some sort of inspiration of a city like Chefchaouen, which is a city also in the northeast of Morocco. So these architects were very much inspired also by really local typologies of architecture. I am 100% sure that when you see these pictures, you also maybe in your mind, you also say, oh my god, looks like something you already maybe have in Chile as well. And this is what I'm talking about. This is the ideas that actually transferring, and also these ideas that comes and goes in different geographies, especially in our geographies in the south. So here you see this very interesting layout of these streets. Ilyas Agri was the first Moroccan architect to graduate from Paris. He came back to Morocco in 1949, and already after independence, he was contracted to build this huge housing building in Casablanca. This is the first housing program built after independence. It was built for more than 25,000 inhabitants. Also, people who used to live in bidonvilles, who used to live in slums, and so we built for them these houses. Azagri was very interested in really trying to build different typologies of houses, not just the ground floor ones that I showed you before of the Rojab. So here you can see the buildings in multiple height actually also. Very interestingly, the big slabs of houses also are built like this. And yeah, I mean, these are photos of the 60s, and you can see, again, these modernist ideas of course, having buildings going on height, and then leaving the soil for gardens and for public spaces. The last project that I want to show you also in terms of housing, is this project done in 1981 and won the Agatha Prize. This is by two architects, Aziz Al and Abdullah Sharahi in 1981. And so here again is another context, but also this idea of, okay, let's build something new, a new typology, a new way of doing. And this is built exactly next to this huge 8x8 grid. So Dalaman is a very dense housing development, and you can see a very interesting, intricate way of entering the houses. Here you find like two ribbons of houses. In between them, you have this pedestrian walking space where people could walk and get into their houses. And this is exactly the space that's created inside. So we have really this is a very interesting way of entering into the houses. One thing that today we talk a lot about in Europe, for example, is making your own garden and maybe producing your own tomato or whatever. This is already something that you can find in Morocco, not in 1980, but even way before the pre-colonial period even. There is this relationship between let's say, earth and people themselves. So this is something that you can see over and over again in many buildings. Lazrat and Shara'i were very interested also in making an architecture that speaks to people, that has some references from traditional architecture, but yet not really being very kitsch, not really being only in the, let's say, in the apparent of it. It's also a very interesting building that had to use a mixed type of construction because most of the slabs were prefabricated, as you can see here. And so the houses, this was for more than 27,000 people, and it was built in less than 2 years and a half. I'm saying this because it shows you also how rapid and how urgent housing was important to build after independence. So yeah, again, these are really nice pictures showing the life in this housing. So with all what I showed you today, I didn't want actually to show you like a big collection of what we have. I think by now you already know that there is a lot to see, but this is just like a small echelon of what we can talk about. But we're only scratching the surface in way of heritage because these buildings that you can see here, these some archives that you can collect, that we collected. For example, this is a really super nice office building in Rabat, in the capital of Morocco. This is a church built in 1954 that is still existing today, and it's very nice when we found this archive. It's really amazing to see the architecture of it and how it was done. So we worked a lot as an association in trying to find these capsules of history. We also worked a lot with trying to meet these architects. Lately, we had a fantastic experience to meet this lady that you see here, Adala Ojeda. She is a Colombian architect. She actually came to Morocco when she got married, and she actually graduated from Bogota, and then she went to Paris to do urban planning, and then she met her husband there. They got married, and her husband, of course, he is Moroccan, and so we were like, yeah, let's go to Morocco. so in the end, she came to Morocco to Fez, and she established her office, and she built more than 100 buildings in Morocco. And now she's in between Fez and Colombia. She always goes to her hometown. But yeah, I mean, we met her, and then she gave us a big collection of her archives, and now we are trying to process. But this is really amazing. This is her own house that she designed herself. Part of this, part of our collaboration today, and when Jose actually contacted us, it's also this kind of work, which is basically, let's say, rebuilding archives and to get to know more about these buildings. And this is what we started doing already in 2016 and 17. And in 2020, during the COVID times, we did a large let's say, summer school online, where we invited students from all over the world to work on Moroccan architecture. And this was one of the early publications. And now I think you have even more to share with us in a couple days, I hope. These are just some pictures that shows you how it could be really a very interesting exercise for students also in architecture, because these buildings, they also show you how they're being built. They also give you a lot of ideas and so on. So by re-rolling this architecture, you also learn many tips. You also learn how to architect somehow. This type of things we try to make it into publications, of course. This is one of our early publications, the modern Casablanca map. I wish if you could come maybe to Morocco, and I'd be happy to gift you this map and also give you a tour. And also we host a lot of public events. Like this one, this was an exhibition about this architect Casablanca. And also we do a lot of public tours with many people, with interested people. Sometimes it's with architecture students or groups, sometimes it's with the big public. And so our association is not just about let's say making the network of professionals, it's also about spreading the news and spreading and sharing this heritage with the public in general, not just the people, the experts. Yeah, we have a series of talks that you can actually see on our website and you can watch it if you are interested. But also, and this I will end with, workshops with actually kids, with students, with people who are actually not aware of the existence of this architecture. And also we don't have a lot of programs to show and to understand this architecture. So we try hard to actually work with public schools, and we go and we actually we play in a way with them by showing them architecture somehow. And this whole work emerged into a way of trying to map into architecture. So we map all the architecture that exists, modern architecture in Morocco. We try to do this mapping. Now we are really ahead. And I think by December we will launch a big survey of this architecture that we actually do mapping. And of course, in every city in Morocco, you can do even a publication. Like for example, Rabat, it's very known, just put us like this, so it could be like a publication like that. In Marrakesh, for example, it's also a very interesting city to show this architecture. So I showed you a lot about Casablanca, but Mounni is also about bridging all the city's histories. So it's about Morocco, not just Casablanca. So okay, I mean, I showed you pretty much all the images that I showed you in this presentation. They emerge in between these offices. Jean François Zivaco, that you can see here in the beginning picture, Farabi de Mazière upper left, Elias Degri down left, and the couple Elia Castillo and Mounni Gastelin. But when you look at it, of course, it is not just these people that actually are interested. But today, if you Google, if you search, you will find mostly about these architects, but nothing else. So for us, our huge work, the huge task that we are trying to do, is actually to expand and to research the other architects, because there are many architects. It is not just these three figures, there are a lot. And this actually opens up many different ways of researching modern architecture in Morocco. For example, for instance, one question could be raised: where are the women architects in the history of Moroccan architecture? Where actually there are a lot of women. The only one we know is Ilia Castillo here, right? But actually there are many, at least in this layout. I highlighted here in green all these women that we don't know nothing about. And for example, this is not something that Mama should focus on only, because of course we have this overview, but this is some of the research that could be done by conducting this podcast. This is what we are trying to do as well. So in a way, this is how I want to resume it. So looking at Zivaco, when you actually zoom out, you find more and more architects. You find, of course, architects from the foreign countries, from France, from Spain, from Belgium, from Switzerland, from Europe in general. But then, of course, if you scroll down, you will see a lot of architects also in other regions coming to work in Morocco. And these architects are pretty much, a lot of them are situated in these geographies, as you can see. These are the countries where they studied, and then they went to Morocco to work. But of course, you have also Moroccan architects. These are the whole generation of Moroccan architects that started from 1956 until 1980. So it's a total of 250 architects that we are trying to actually look into their work. And the idea is really to understand their work, but also to make emphasis of modern architecture in Morocco as aiding other modern architecture in the whole world. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Lahbib. You listen well?
Yes, I hear you.
Thanks. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the lecture. It's very interesting to see many relation that also we live here in Chile in this age and this moment of the architecture. And also it's interesting to see the beginning of the lecture that you start with the Google research about the Chilean architecture, and are many contemporary architecture. So the question is where is and how is the local architecture that we have that don't appears in this type of easy research in internet. And obviously, it's a big question that we try to explain in the theoretical classes that we have in the university and in the School of Architecture. And also the things that we share together, for example, the experience with the earthquake. Obviously, Chile also is we have a lot of earthquake normally. So the architecture in this moment have a very particular role and input to create new spaces. And also with the years, we change a lot of the type of structures and design that we have to don't have the same problem with these natural situations.
Thank you, Lahbib, for your talk. And yes, it was very interesting know all that similar things related with architecture and our cities that you live in Morocco and we in Chile. We can learn a lot of both experiences. And yeah, another thing that is similar is like the climate in Morocco, and many of your pictures that you showed in your talk is very similar to the reality here in Chile. So I think it's a very good talk that we can make a very rich relation between both countries and architectures that I think are growing up or making more famous, and it's very important the work that you do in Mama.
Yeah, thank you. I think I really think that it's very important to highlight this type of architecture in our region because as you said, I mean, when we talk even in history, when we do courses about history, for example, we talk a lot about Le Corbusier, we talk a lot about Toscani, we talk a lot about these figures, of course, right? But it is very important also to see what we have as our own production as well, because those architects also deserve to be known. And so the only way to make them known is actually to work on the project, is actually to highlight their project. So this is definitely something very important. When I was at the School of Architecture in Casablanca, I actually did with my associate Mounni, we did a studio where we actually compared the architecture of Morocco with the architecture of Brazil. And it is really amazing, all the differences and also all the connections we can have. So I'm really ignorant of modern architecture of Chile, to be honest, but I'm really sure that there is a lot to learn from each other. There is a lot to learn from both geographies. And yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, I hope really will say that you are thinking of coming to Morocco, and it's also like a big invitation to all students, all of you here attending the lecture. I really hope to see you, honestly. I mean, let's plan it maybe. I can participate in this planning as well. I can host you, all of you, don't worry, but you have to pay for the flight though.
Thank you very much, Lahbib, for the invitation. Obviously, that it's an amazing opportunity if we have the time and the moment to do it. Also, I know that the students have some question for you. And to before of that, also I like the idea to the final things that you share about the history of the woman of architect woman of Morocco. Because also here in Chile there are very big research that some cluster of heritage make about the history of the different women of Chile that developed the modernity here in the last century. So also in the lesson that we make with Joaquin, we share a lot of these other histories about some special architects or special territories that have his history and architecture and things to learn. Entonces, ¿quién quiere hacer una pregunta, queridos? Yo sé que prepararon algunas.
What do you think about the advantage of the arrival of modern architecture in Morocco? Do you think it has a positive or negative change?
I'm really sorry, can you just say it a bit out loud because I don't hear you very well.
What do you think about the advantage of the arrival of modern architecture in Morocco? Do you think it has a positive or negative change?
I'm really sorry. I don't know. Maybe if Jose can say the question again. I couldn't.
Don't worry, don't worry. You listen.
Sorry.
No, you listen. You listen now. Lahbib.
Yeah.
Okay. The question is, what do you think about the develop and the arrival of the modern architecture in Morocco? Like, in your opinion, you think that is had a positive or negative change between the local architecture and this type of situations?
Yeah, okay, that's a very interesting question. Thank you. Sorry. Let me say that this is a bit the idea that we have that actually modern architecture is actually a creation of Europe, and it came to us. And this is, for me, it is something that is not completely true. Why I think is because modern architecture, if you talk about the movement, then yes, I understand. Of course, the movement of modern architecture is something that was established in Europe and then it went all over the world. But modernity, like the way of doing architecture, Morocco was always connected to these influences from all over the world. So for me, I consider the building that I showed you in Westad, the castas, the small castles, the big castles. I consider this very modern at the time. Morocco, for example, is also the one who created Andalus in Spain. When you go to Spain, Andalus, when you go to Granada, for example, when you go to these countries, to the cities, these are things that were built at that time by Moroccans, and these are things that were completely futuristic, that were completely modern at the time. So there is a slight difference between saying, okay, modern architecture transfer of what? Are we talking about the movement, the Corbusier movement, and Siam, and so on? Then yes, it was transferred to Morocco, and then Morocco reacted to it. But if we're talking about modernity in general, I would say that Morocco was never considered as a traditional state or as a country that needs improvement or something like this. This is really like the colonial way how we were framed as Moroccans. This is why I show you also these pictures of these buildings. And I showed you at the time, it was very clear in the narrative of the French. They were saying Moroccans, they cannot live in buildings because they are not civilized enough. You know what I mean? So that's why actually this narrative, this colonial narrative, it stayed with us. Even in our geography, I think even in America, in Latin America, it's the same thing. We always are branded as people who are not modern, who are not able to be modern. But I'm just thinking about it as the way that today, the architecture we do today is a contemporary architecture. It's the same as we can do all over the world. But of course, we should not lose ourselves in it. We should still keep things that are totally mattering to us. So to answer your second part of the question, which is it negative or positive? I think it's a bit of both. It's really like sometimes it can be considered very negative when it's framed in a way that does not take into consideration the cultural and social preferences of Morocco, right? But at the same time, it could be very positive in a way that it's also very important to stay in touch with the whole world, not to refrain ourselves in traditions or ourselves in how architecture we have been doing it in the 18th or in the 17th century. We live in 2025, so I don't see any other choice but actually to do architecture the way we should live in it today, not the way we should live in it a long centuries ago. I don't know if it's clear.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Claro.
Claro, claro.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. What is the process or methodology for recovering information of lesser known architects in Morocco?
Oh man, you went too fast. I'm sorry. Maybe Jose can say the question.
Yeah, la primera. Okay, the question it's about the work that you do in the foundation. So, what is the process or methodology for research information on lesser known architects? What is the way that you use normally to take the information that you share with us?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think one of the big challenges in doing research in our region is also archives and also trying to find these architects. For us, we just try to find one lead after the other. Okay, just one lead after the other. We don't force it. We don't actually say, okay, now we should find a lot of stuff. So we go to the archive department and we try to tell them, no, give us everything you have and so on. No, this is not how we work. We work based on, as I told you, one lead after the other. I'm going to give you an example. The woman that I showed you, the architect, Ojeda Plata, the Colombian architect, for example, this is an architect that we didn't even know of her existence, right? But by publishing our work in Instagram and also on the website, one time one architect reached out to us and they say, you know what, there is this architect, she's going to leave Morocco, but she does not know what to do with her archives. And so at that time, this is when it hit us that actually there are many architects that they want to leave Morocco, or maybe they are very, I mean, they start working and so they don't know what to do with their archives, and so they just burn them or they just lose them, you know. So this is when it comes to the idea to meet her. So we went to Faz and we met her, and she gave us her collection. So this is one way of doing it, like by publishing, by really working bit by bit, then you find leads. But methodologically, what we do also is that we try to at least go at least once a month to go to the municipalities and to look into the archives. And sometimes we go there without knowing what you are looking for, you know? You just go in there and you just go into the archives and try looking at stuff and then you find really amazing stuff. This is also one way how we do it. The collection we gave you to work with, this is a collection that took us at least 8 years to be collected. So it's not something that we just found in the internet. Everything that we have, everything that actually we shared with you is collected really piece by piece. Sometimes from institutional archives, sometimes from books, sometimes from the people themselves, the architects themselves, sometimes from families. So it is not one methodology, there are many methodologies. Yeah.
Hi. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, how has vernacular architecture evolved in Morocco and what does it look like today?
Wow, that's a complicated question.
Yeah, sorry.
um, so let's define vernacular. What is vernacular architecture? Because if you define vernacular architecture as architecture without architects, then we're talking about exactly what I showed you this image, you know, of the castles and then the building of the hotel. This is exactly how we connect between the history and the modern architecture. If you talk about vernacular as the traditional way of building in Morocco, this is still happening. So in many regions, a lot of people are still building in a very traditional way. When I say very traditional way, that means, again, without an architect, it's something that they just learn how to build and they start building, you know. But today we have a big risk of this knowledge of construction, because I think a lot of people today in these regions, they think that building with Adobe or building with stones, it's not modern, you know. So for them, modernity means we should build with concrete. And that is a big problem, because then you have these regions where actually the climate is like 40 degrees in the summer, and these people are building with concrete, and so then in the summer, it's like an oven, you know? So it's not actually adapted to the context. So we have also in Morocco this problem of adapting architecture to the size, because the people they don't understand actually the idea of those people when they were building with Adobe, they were not stupid, they were very smart, because they knew that their buildings gonna be protected from the climate, and also the buildings gonna respect the earth, because even if your building falls, then it falls on earth, I mean it goes back to earth. But with concrete slabs, it's impossible that it goes into the earth again, you know? And this is exactly what happened in Morocco lately, in October last year. when we had a huge earthquake in the region of Marrakech, and many of the buildings in concrete, they fall, and a lot of buildings in adobe, they stayed not fall at all. So it also shows the resilience of architecture, you know. So yeah, I mean, there is, let's say, the vernacular that is still continuing, but very, very slow. And now we have more and more this capitalistic architecture with more concrete and concrete and concrete, which is really something unfortunate in Morocco now.
So in that case, I have another question. It would be you have a plan to increase the knowledge of this architecture, vernacular architecture, in the regions where people are constructing with cement and other not quite ideal pieces.
Yeah. No, I think there are many. One thing that is very interesting in Morocco, it is not just Mama. There are many associations and many organizations working on different levels. And there is, for example, if you are interested in this type of architecture, there are 2 or 3 organizations, also very young organizations, that they are interested in this vernacular architecture and also Adobe architecture, Earth architecture, and so they're working also on making more awareness. They even build prototypes of these houses. They're also building guides of how to not lose this knowledge of construction. So they really draw really nice drawings to make the steps of building a house with Adobe, for example. So there are many. So I think Jose can maybe share my email with you all actually. And if you have any questions related to that, I am happy to connect you or to give you links to these organizations. But for us, Mama, I mean, we are the bad guys. We are the guys who protect modern architecture, you know, like big concrete and brutalists and so on. So it's not too much our thing.
It's a good work also. We need to share with different type of knowledge to create. Finally, it's a very big work for many different persons that know that the heritage is an interesting thing to learn and also to share with others. ¿Alguna otra pregunta? Sí. ¿Hay alguna otra pregunta acá? Yeah. We make the last question, Lahbib, to finish the lecture.
Hi. Hi. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello.
You are a bit far, so I hear you, but not very well.
Hi. And now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, what is your opinion of architecture in Morocco today, and what are some of its key challenges?
Okay. Thank you. So today there is a really nice generation of architects building really nice things in Morocco. I mean, this is also something that I think is very important to show is the fact that why we are interested in this architecture is also because it also shows us how it gives us a lot of lessons, right? So, for example, I'm going to give you an example that is very known, that you know, all of you. You know the first houses of Alejandro Aravena in Quito, for example, Quinta. Those houses, for example, you know, this idea of building only half of the building and then people will build the rest of it, right? So this is a very known idea and very famous thing. But what if I told you that the same idea was actually built in Morocco already in 1949, you know? Already at that time, there was this idea of, okay, we are only going to build a small part of the house, and then when you have the money, when people have the money, then they can complete their building, right? I am 100% also sure that Alejandro Davida, when he thought about this idea, he was not telling you, okay guys, I am the one who invented it, you know? He knew and he knows also the history of architecture very much. But actually he knows what is good to take from this history. That's why it's very important to know the history of architecture in our own countries or in the world in general. That's why we study architecture. We study architecture to actually know what we start from. Otherwise, you will look as a student also, even as an architect, sometimes you look stupid when you say, okay, I'm inventing this. But actually, you're not inventing because what you're doing is something that has been done a long time ago, right? Why I'm saying this? Because it really relates to your question of what I think about architecture today in Morocco. I think of it as all the contemporary architects that are building really nice buildings today, they have this capacity to know what was built in Morocco before. So they have this capacity to link their architecture today to the heritage of a long time ago. And this is very, very central in how we do architecture, how we practice. I am also a practitioner architect, so I have my office in Casablanca, and this is a big challenge for me, always trying to understand what was built before me and what I want to build. And by doing that, you learn from the lessons of the mistakes of others, and then you build something new. So yeah, I mean, we have a lot of young Moroccan architects today that are really building super interesting pieces of architecture. And it's very easy now. They are very young because they have been published also internationally. So let's say that architecture today in Morocco, it has both these architects are doing really good architecture, but also we have more of a consumption architecture, which is like basically boxes and stuff. So we also have that as well. I'm not saying that we are all the Moroccan architects are brilliant and are doing a super exceptional architecture. It's also a bit of both.
Okay, thank you very much, Lahbib, for all this situation. I think that for the students are very nice to have you here in the courses, and also thank you very much for all the files that you share with us. We have the students have a lot of work to do with the next exercise, and I think that we keep in touch these next weeks and month.
Great. I'm really looking forward to your work, guys. And I'm sorry, I also received many emails from you, and I tried to answer them. But actually, what we shared with you again is really what we have been able to find. And so you are part of the archives now. You are also building something new that actually we can also use to inform us for these articles. So thank you very much. And I'm really happy that you're working on it. And I can invite you for a couscous if you come to work. That's for sure.
Okay. Un último aplauso. Okay. Thank you very much, Lahbib. See you.
Thank you so much, Jose.
Bye bye.
Ciao, ciao. Take care. Bye, guys. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.